Thanks, Maisha. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Public Works hearing for Wednesday. My name is John Sway. I'm today's hearing officer for San Francisco Public Works. Maisha Hervey will be the clerk for this hearing. As she mentioned, this hearing is being recorded via Zoom and will be available afterward through a link on the San Francisco Public Works website at sfpublicworks.org. As this is a virtual hearing, there's no sign-in sheet, so if you would like to receive information about the results of this hearing, please send an email to the email address listed on the hearing notice. Today's hearing is scheduled to consider two items. The first item is order number 204730, encroachment permit on Noe Street. This item is to consider an application for a minor sidewalk encroachment permit 20MSE-00384 for new 4 feet high trash enclosures encroaching 3 feet 6 inches into the Noe Street public right of way, approximately 105.5 square feet, shown on the plan titled Trash Enclosure, prepared by Stimson Design. The second item is order number 204828, Mission Rock Project, 3rd Street and Mission Rock Street, final map PID 9443. These are requests for exceptions to subdivision code and regulations and tentative map conditions of approval. Subdivider of the Mission Rock Project, 3rd Street and Mission Rock Street, final map PID 9443, submitted a request for exceptions to the subdivision code, the subdivision regulations, and the tentative map conditions of approval for the project. My job as the hearing officer today is to gather the facts for the hearing item, listen to your testimonies, and help our Director of Public Works make his determinations. I will not be making any decisions today. Instead, I will forward the findings from this hearing and make my recommendations to the Director, and the Director will make the final recommendations. When the Director's determinations are made, the department will notify you of them if you have provided your contact information. The hearing will proceed as follows for the two cases scheduled today. I will ask Public Works staff to speak first and present the case. Then I will allow the property owner, appellant, or applicant to speak. Then any member of the public or witness who wants to speak. Then the department, if they would like to address any comments. And then the property owner or applicant again, if there's any rebuttals. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to speak. The clerk will monitor the time for all speakers and will indicate when the speaker has 30 seconds left. If you're a party to this proceeding, I will call on you to speak. If you plan to use visual materials in your presentation, please let us know before you speak. You will then have the standard 3 minutes to provide your comments. If you're a member of the public or witness who wants to speak, wait for me to call on public comment, then use Zoom's raise your hand feature if you're on a computer to put yourself in the queue to speak. If you're dialing in on your phone, dial *9 to indicate you're raising your hand. When it's your turn to speak, we will recognize you. If on your phone and you're muted, press *6 to unmute yourself. If you would like to use visual materials, let us know before you speak. Comments and questions should be addressed to me and not to the department or the applicant. If you cannot finish your comments in the allotted time, you may submit written testimony to me by the end of this hearing. If I feel a question is warranted, I will ask the question. After all comments are completed, I will close the item. So we will now begin the hearing. The first item is order number 204730, encroachment permit, Noe Street. May I please have the Public Works presentation on this item?
Yes, good morning, everybody. My name is Eric. I am processing the DPW VSM permit, encroachment permit for this property. This is a new application for, like you say, a 4-foot high trash enclosure encroaching 3.5 feet into the Noe Street public right-of-way. We've had our Bureau of Street Use and Environmental Services meet with the applicant to do an internal site review to see if it was possible for the applicant to keep trash enclosures within the private lot. After the walkthrough with the applicant, the Bureau of Environmental Services liaison recommended that the property owner should seek to apply for a minor sidewalk encroachment because they found that they did not have space within the private lot. We reviewed it. I reviewed the frontage. Noe Street is 19 feet wide. Again, the trash enclosure is 3.5 feet wide. It will take also 115 square feet approximately, which is about 12% of that frontage. Along with the review process, we do have to, with these new encroachments, the applicant has to provide public notification, which they have, and it's turned out that we have had a lot of neighbors within a 150-foot radius object to the issuance of this encroachment permit, which we are here for public hearing. That's all I have.
Thank you. And did you say the sidewalk width is 19 feet?
Yes, the sidewalk width is 19 feet on the Noe Street frontage.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so now we can open it up for public comment. I do want to acknowledge that the department has received approximately 19 emails, mostly in opposition to the permit. Is there any public comment or anyone who would like to speak on this item? I see some hands raised.
Okay, it looks like Selena Hughes. If you would unmute yourself, and then you will have 3 minutes for public comment. Selena, can you hear us? Okay, Selena, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello?
Okay, Selena.
All right, okay.
Okay, we can hear you.
I apologize. Yeah, I apologize for that. I live at 4014 18th Street, which is about 2 houses in from that corner, which was formerly a 7-Eleven. That corner has always been a bit of a problem corner for trash for years since I've lived there. And now that the 7-Eleven is gone, we're hoping that somebody would come in there that would actually maintain and take care of the corner and keep it a pretty space for all those that walk through. It's a high tourist area. There's a lot of people walking through. There's neighborhood homes right next to it and across from it. It seems to me there are absolutely enough space within the property for them to take care of their own trash and for them to put their trash bins on a public space. I have a definite problem with that. It doesn't beautify the neighborhood. It puts somebody else's trash in the way, and it will be a magnet for other trash. Plus, it's right next to people's homes. So because the property owner refuses to take care of their own internal stuff, and now they're pushing it on the public. So that's all I have to say. I'm very much opposed to this, and I will now mute myself. Thank you very much. Oops, how do I need to mute? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have Matt Brenza. Matt, please go ahead and mute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
So I'm a neighbor on Ford Street, less than 1 block from this location. This corner and this property owner is the #1 problem spot for graffiti, trash, noise, and dangerous behaviors within our whole neighborhood. When we walk with our children, we cross the street mid-block, not at a crosswalk, to avoid this area. And this has been for the decade we've lived in this neighborhood. We've had countless community meetings trying to work with this property owner in the past to address issues. The property owner does not live in SF, has never engaged with us directly. And instead, their proxy, the property manager, has never acted in good faith. This is not a good neighbor, and we should not be rewarding bad behaving neighbors with access and free use of our public space for private use. This enclosure will create more problems for this area. more areas to accumulate trash, more areas for graffiti, and it will reduce the opportunity for better uses for this space. In fact, us, along with Friends of the Urban Forest, have tried to engage this property owner in planting greenery along this wall, like across the street at 18th and Noe on the other side of the block, who did do this, which is a caring neighbor, Athena and Scott. This neighbor did not engage in that process, and putting trash enclosures here would totally remove the opportunity to maybe put plants here someday, maybe to have a better tenant who could use this for outdoor dining. But instead, we're talking about gifting our public right of way to a disengaged out-of-town landlord. I mean, staff, thank you for your time, but this does not live up to San Francisco values. And you're going to hear from a bunch of neighbors here today that have tried for now over a decade to engage and have had no success with this landowner. We can't reward this behavior. Thank you. And if you want to see history of this engagement, our supervisor can provide that information.
Thank you.
Okay, we have Lauren. Lauren, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
I'd like to echo a lot of the things that Matt Brazina said. I think we have a real opportunity here. I also live on Ford Street, so just about a block away. I think we have a real opportunity to do something positive with the space. It gets a lot of sun exposure. And like he mentioned, I think it would be nice to have an outdoor garden there, to do a parklet there, to do some outdoor dining there, and to improve the space as opposed to, yes, allowing a private business to use it to store their trash. I think it will continue to be a problem in the neighborhood if that's the direction it goes. And I think now is the time to reclaim that space and use it for a more positive impact for the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay, we have Mr. Thomas Lucas. Thomas, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the committee here. I have lived across the street from the building for almost 25 years. I'm on 18th Street. Over these 25 years, that corner has been an attraction for a lot of uncivil behavior by underhoused people in this neighborhood. My concern is that a structure put on this sidewalk will provide more opportunity for the unhoused people to congregate, and that creates a lot of adverse social behavior as a result. But more importantly, in my 25 years of community activism through the Eureka Valley Neighborhood Association, which I'm a member of, we have tried to engage the property owners over the years in allowing us to work with them in creating a space for public gardens through our cooperation with Friends of the Urban Forest. The owners, including the current owners, have not even extended the courtesy to engage us or to communicate, and it's been very frustrating. So I must admit that I have quite a few reservations about giving up this public space for, as other people have said, for really the financial benefits of the owner. The 7-Eleven, which had been in that location, has space within inside of it for any future retail or restaurant operation to contain their garbage within the space. But please do not allow the owners of this building to take over public space because they cannot reconfigure the internal organization of the building to accommodate trash. I know that there is space within the alley on 18th Street behind the building for trash bins, and it just has to be better organized by the ownership. Also, I'm very concerned during this period where the 7-Eleven store has been vacant. The owners currently are not even attentive to the graffiti that appears on the door or the congregation of drug-using homeless people sleeping on private property. I've had to engage the police several times to ask for the police to respond to that. I would like to have seen a more proactive response by the management. But as I said, I'm completely against this. I would like to see public space used for what we in the neighborhood would like, and that is giving some of that space over to gardens through cooperation with the Friends of the Urban Forest. I think it would really be something that we as neighbors would like to see there. So thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Thomas. We have Carl Flegger. You can go ahead and unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Great. I live on Noe Street on this block, directly across from, right on the corner, first house in on the west side of Noe Street. So my desk, my at-home office looks down straight at this space. And so I see what's going on there on the side, on the Noe side of that building, like 8 or 10 hours a day. I first want to comment on the dollar value that I think the city is giving up to this building owner by allowing it to use the public space in this way. 115 square foot of city public space would increase the effective footprint of that building by almost 4%. And given property values in the neighborhood, it's no surprise that the building owner would want that, because another 100 plus square feet of internal space that they can lease to businesses will make them quite a bit more in rent. You know, at normal $1,000 per square foot or higher property values, this is essentially the city giving the property owner $100,000 in extra property value. You know, this is a precedent that I think I'm surprised that the city would want to do. Almost no other corner large buildings in this neighborhood have toter enclosures in public right-of-way space. You know, if this were to be granted, I'm worried about the precedent it would set. You know, every other big corner property in the area or the city may want to get this similar value increase in the leasable internal space. But somehow all the other big buildings find ways to store their toters internally. Currently, the space used by the 7-Eleven previously is now empty, as they don't have a new leasee yet. So I've been inside this space, both in the back and in the front. There is ample space to store 115 square feet of toter. The overall footprint of the building, this is a lot that's 50 feet by 60 feet per the city block records. So that's 3,000 square feet of overall footprint. It's hard to conceive of the idea that an empty, you know, the 7-Eleven is about 2/3 of that with a bar next to it and the back alley. It's hard to imagine they can't find 115 square feet out of that 3,000 overall, especially when it operated perfectly fine for many years with the 7-Eleven actually actively using the space. So that I wanted to make that important point. And then the last thing is, I worry that one of the uncivil behaviors that happens in this corner and in this area is fire. So we've had several people not only lighting up pipes, but there have been some people walking around the sidewalks of the Castro with blowtorches. And just about 2 weeks ago, there was a fire. Somebody lit a pair of jeans on fire right in this space, about 5 feet from the wall, on the side of that 7-Eleven, and that fire burned until somebody called 911. And while we were waiting for the ambulance, I ran over there and grabbed a hose and attached it and doused the fire. Wooden enclosures along the side of that wall would not only increase space for graffiti, which is already a problem with the bare wall, but it would provide a space for people to squat where it's harder to see them. And I'm sure people would squat more and smoke and do other drugs. But I'm a little worried about the fire risk in addition, since that seems to be an issue here. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Carolyn, please unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you. My name is Carolyn Thomas. I'm here to speak against permitting this 115 square foot encroachment. One, as previously stated, the building for the past 30 years has been able to properly manage their recycling bins for all building tenants, which includes 2 businesses and 12 apartments. In fact, DPW denied a permit to erect a trash enclosure in 2010. And since then, the building footprint hasn't changed. And the building currently has fewer operating tenants, creating refuse. 2 businesses are currently non-operating. Also, the encroachment wouldn't conform with the neighborhood aesthetic. There's no greater good here. This isn't a fire hydrant. It's not a utility box. The neighborhood, as you've heard, has organized and worked for many years to enhance the neighborhood, including safety and beautification and health of the area. This is purely a utilitarian structure, which doesn't enhance any of that in any way. Instead, it creates an eyesore and eliminates the potential for future beautification. There's many buildings, as Carl and others have stated, that are similarly situated with residences and businesses. None of them have similar structures, and we don't want to set this precedent in the Castro business district. The design, as I've seen it, creates places for people to hide and stash stuff. They've been hiding and stashing stuff for years, but the additional corners would just be problematic for the neighborhood. And this building is zoned, this lot is zoned NCD, but all the surrounding buildings are RH3 and RH2, which again goes to the aesthetic of the neighborhood. The residents really in the neighborhood include many elderly, several who have mobility impairments. We also have many young preschool children. The conditions here simply don't exist, which necessitate erecting a large structure, which we see as an eyesore along this very well-traveled residential block, and we're against it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have Sean Lee. Sean, you may go ahead and unmute.
Thanks, Maisha and John. Can I show a couple pictures in a little bit? Can you give me that ability?
Yeah, you can, do you want to send it to us? But you can go ahead and share your screen.
Let me see how to share my screen. I'm not seeing. Okay, you know what? Let me just go ahead and I was going to give you pictures of the actual area and behind it, but I'll send that to you later. So I own and live at 49 Noe Street, and that's the only building that's directly adjacent to this proposed structure. My family of 4, including 2 young children, 5 and under, as well as my brother-in-law who lives in 47 Noe, walk by this area daily. We have a view of the area with the proposed structure, and hear what goes on in the area throughout the day. We purchased our building at the end of 2019 with the hope of helping to make the 18th and Noe Street intersection beautiful and better in the future. Clearly, adding trash enclosures to a public space is not going to make this area better, except for the owner of that building and at the expense of the public. As the owner of that the adjacent building, I can see into the property and understand why the property manager wants to build these enclosures. I believe that the property manager has currently placed trash bins obstructing a fire escape and is illegal. And I wanted to show you that picture. I know that there are internal storage areas accessed from behind the building in the little alley that can be used to store these receptacles. Instead, the property manager would rather lease the space as storage for the retail storefront and make room outside of the property on public land to store these trash enclosures, increasing the available square footage while storing the trash on the sidewalk in the enclosures. I must also note that the building has had building inspection violations since 2010 regarding the obstruction of the fire escape. Anchor Realty, the property manager, is not only not fixing a previous violation, it's knowingly putting tenants living in the above apartments at risk in the event of a fire, while essentially looking to have the SF taxpayer subsidize the storage of the building's trash bins and allowing it to add available leasing space. I know it's not your job to report this to the fire marshal, and that's something that I'm looking into, but at least I'm hoping that SFDPW will not reward unscrupulous property managers that are seeking to personally gain at the public's expense. I'll forward those photos later, but just wanted to say my piece. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jonathan, go ahead and unmute.
Hi. So I live directly adjacent to this property at 487 Knowing. And I am basically seconding everything that my neighbors are saying in opposition to this permit. And one thing I would like to submit to the record is video surveillance footage of the fire that Carl has just mentioned, to show that a fire risk is a very well possibility if there are trash enclosures installed in public right of way. So I'll be forwarding this to Eric Lam. And just want to get that noted. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else for this particular item?
I'll tell them that you're
Okay.
here.
Okay,
Can
it
you
looks like
Russ?
we have Mr. Caruso. Hi, Robert.
I'll send a message and say,
Thomas, could you please mute?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Robert Caruso, do you have any comments for this particular item?
Can you hear me?
We hear some feedback and echo.
Yes.
All right, is this better?
That's better.
Let me try this. Can you hear me? This is Robert Caruso. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Good. Okay. Now I can barely hear you, but I'm Robert Caruso, and I'm here with Mark Campana, and we represent the managers of the building. And I want to give you some background on this because, first of all, I've heard several comments made that there's financial gain to be made from this. But this is not a financial situation. This is a life safety issue. The situation is such that all those trash containers in the building are stored in the alleyway in the rear of the building. And the fire department, the San Francisco Fire Department, has made it very clear that that's a life safety issue because the tenants in the building do not have free and easy access, egress from the building in case of a fire. So they've instructed us to get those trash containers out of there. And we've looked at all the other alternatives, and frankly, there is no other alternative. That alleyway is the only area that allows us presently to store those trash containers. So we contacted Todd Stinson, a very good architect, and he designed, and you have those drawings, he designed an enclosure that matches the facade of the building. So we were conscious of trying to keep this thing as, we don't want it to be as obtrusive. We wanted to make this as aesthetically pleasing as possible. And there is no other place to put these containers. So this idea that somehow people are going to, or the owners are going to benefit financially, this is not a financial consideration. This is the owners trying to satisfy the San Francisco Fire Department and their order to move those trash containers out of the way of the tenants. And by the way, we've contacted all the tenants in the building, and every tenant in that building supports that alleyway being cleared and those trash containers being removed. So if we had another place to put those things, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We wouldn't have gone to the expense of designing that enclosure. And by the way that enclosure was designed, we tried to make it so that the homeless cannot have access to it. And you can see that from the drawings of the way we put this together. And also where we located it is away from the fire escapes that are on the Noe Street side of the building, so that there's not going to be any issue with the egress on the fire escapes. But there's no other place to put this thing.
It's the trash enclosures for upstairs to tenants, residential tenants.
I'm sorry?
Trash enclosures for the residential tenants too.
Yeah, there's trash enclosures for the residential tenants also. So if we could come, if somebody could show us where there's another space to put these trash containers, well, open to suggestions, because there is no place for them. They're either in that alleyway or they're going to have to be out in the public area. And that's why we designed something that's, because what's going to happen, this is two departments. I mean, we're talking to DPW about this, and we're talking to the fire department about this. And in my opinion, we have to acquiesce to what the fire department wants. They're the driving force here. This didn't come up. This is not a frivolous request that we came up with because we were going to make some. There's going to be a financial benefit. We're trying to satisfy the San Francisco Fire. Mark, you have any comments on this?
This is Mark Campana, and I represent Anchor Realty as the property manager of the building. And the couple of things that I would like to reiterate, there are 8 residential units above the 2 commercial spaces. And I can tell you that this is not to create more square footage in one of the commercial spaces who don't have any room or access for garbage cans, because they would block to put their own garbage cans even in their spaces, as they would block the secondary means of egress out of those businesses as well. The only place to store, everyone needs to understand that this building almost goes lot line to lot line. The only open space or common area or outside space is a narrow passageway at the rear of the building that has 2 staircases that drop down for the tenants above.
Excuse me, I wanted to give, you guys have about a 25-second warning. We're over the 3 minutes.
That's pretty much all I have to say. That this is the thing. The neighbors may not like it, but here's the thing. It's going to be on somebody else's conscience if there is a fire in that building and the tenants cannot exit properly from the building and someone gets hurt. And that's what this is about. It is about life safety, nothing else.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Robert and Mark, do you have any documentation from the fire department that you could share with their recommendation?
Essentially, the fire department does not have a recommendation because they understand, as does the former head of DPW, who's been out to the site with me to visit the site and basically abated a notice of violation from years ago, because they all agreed there's no other place to put the trash cans. And the only alternative is to create this encroachment and enclosure on the sidewalk for life safety. Everyone is agreed to that, and the fire department acknowledges it too, and that's why they haven't pressed the issue. They acknowledge there is no other place, and candidly, I'm the one that has pushed this, not so much as the fire department has pushed it or DPW. I've pushed it as I sat as an expert witness on another building in the city on Mission Street where they had nowhere to store the garbage cans, so they were storing them on the roof. And someone threw a lit cigarette into the garbage can, and the entire building plus the adjacent building burnt to the ground several years ago. And I don't want to see another issue like that because we don't have a place we don't have a place to store the garbage cans properly. And in this case, of course, we're not going to store them on the roof, but in this instance, it's going to prevent people from potentially getting out of the building.
Do you have a contact at the fire department that you could share that you've been in touch with on this matter?
Yeah, but I don't have that with me or in front of me, but
You could share.
we can get that to you.
Great, thank you.
Should I send it to Eric Lamb?
Yes.
Okay.
Maisha, do we have any additional comment from folks who have not yet spoken?
No additional comments from folks that have not spoken. If there,
Suzanne Boyle is with Tom Lucas. She would like to comment. I did communicate that through chat.
okay, I'm sorry, what's her name?
Suzanne Boyle.
Okay, go ahead, Suzanne.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I live across the street from 7-Eleven at 3995 since 1998. And having that store closed is a real blessing because now I can get in and out of my garage. I can sleep through the night without people yelling and screaming and being disruptive. And if you would look at the streets after our pickup of garbage, you'll see that there's garbage on the sidewalk all the time at the morning after our cans are emptied because people go through them at night. Just yesterday, there was a guy that was sleeping in that area that you want to put the cans. I don't understand why you can't take some of the storage area in the back of 7-Eleven and use it to store the cans like everybody else does. I can't leave my cans on the street. I have to store them in my garage because I have one. And if I didn't have a garage, I'd have to store it somewhere out of sight. So I don't think that creating garbage cans on the sidewalk is going to solve any problems and may create more that we've just gotten rid of because the store closed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Fire department.
Okay, thank you. If we have no other additional comments from anyone that has not spoken already, I will defer to John Sway, the hearing officer, and we will move on to our next item.
I just have one question for the public works staff. It was mentioned that there was a BSES evaluation of the site, and I wanted to know if there's any documentation or report from BSES regarding their findings.
Hi, this is Eric with BSM. Yes, I received an email from the BSES officer that went out, which I can forward to you.
Okay, thank you.
And it actually looks like we do have one comment from Kelly. Kelly, please unmute and go ahead.
All right, thank you for your time. I don't have as much a comment as I do some questions. I have lived across the street from the property on 18th Street for 17 years. I have witnessed that Anchor Realty has been unresponsive to many of the neighborhood requests for conversation regarding the use of that space. I have seen a lot of homeless and vagrant and really ill behavior that was brought about by the 7-Eleven's occupancy of that space and an unwillingness for Anchor to really address that issue with its tenant. And it's been very frustrating because I couldn't sleep at night for 17 years in the front bedroom of my apartment because of the noise. So now the trash enclosure that's being discussed, again, would attract the same, could conceivably attract the same people to hang out and smoke their crack pipes and you know, the homeless issue that we all have here in San Francisco. So that's not a great thing in my estimation. My biggest question is why now? Like why there's no tenant in that building. The garbage has been handled well for 30 years. There is a trash alley on the south side of this, on the east side of the street on 18th Street. That seems to be a shared alley between two buildings, the two buildings. And I'm not certain what that alley looks like, whether it could accommodate more garbage, but that certainly would be perhaps one solution that could be investigated before a hearing is made on that. And I do think that it's really sad that you would put up a trash bin in a place that perhaps a really great tenant, like a little cafe or a restaurant would come along, and they might want to use that space for, you know, outside seating, which we all really need at this time, not garbage on the street. So it seems like you're cutting your nose off despite your face to put trash in a place that could be used with a more aesthetic appeal for a neighborhood that's been really struggling hard for 17 years to make something of that corner that would be nice. So that Anchor is not willing to think about it, that the representative of the property owner is not willing to kind of think about it and work with the neighbors is really telling. It's really telling. This is, you know, we're San Francisco. We should all get along. That's all I have to say it now. And I have I do have a lot of photographs that I'd like to share, and I will send those through from the history of the 7-Eleven. I've seen horrible things over the past 17 years, trust me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kelly.
Okay, thank you for all the public comment. If there's no more public comment, I will now close this item. Okay, the item's closed. We will now move on to our second item, order number 204828, Mission Rock Project, 3rd Street and Mission Rock Street, final map PID 9443. I'd like to invite Public Works staff, Shauna Gates, to make the presentation.
Good morning. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So my name is Shauna Gates. I work with the Infrastructure Task Force. I'm here to present the request for exceptions for the Mission Rock Phase 1 project. On June 4th, 2021, we received a letter requesting 7 exceptions from the subdivision code, regulations, and tentative map conditions of approval. This is a map of the project site. It's located within Mission Bay. And shown in yellow is the 12 kV electrical distribution alignment that is the subject of this exceptions request. This plan view shows the phases 1 through 4. That's the full build out of the Mission Rock development site. Shaded in green is the phase 1 area that's currently permitted and under construction, and includes a system of underground electrical distribution facilities. Shown in yellow is the interim 12 kV electrical distribution line, which is the subject of this exceptions request. This line is primarily overhead. There is a portion of the alignment that is underground within the Mission Rock Street and Terry Francois Boulevard intersection, shown by the box in orange. And then shown in blue is the future permanent underground alignment that will be constructed in future phases and will replace the need for the 12 kV electrical distribution line. Exception number 1 from the subdivision code. The subdivision code requires all utility lines to be undergrounded as specified in Article 18 of the Public Works Code. An exception is requested to authorize the overhead segment of the 12 kV line, which, as I mentioned, is most of the alignment, with the exception of the portion that was shown in the orange box line. Exception number 2, the subdivision regulations require that the subdivider shall not offer public improvements to the city for purposes of city maintenance and liability unless the improvements include the full, complete, and functional public street. An exception is requested to allow the developer to offer these 12 kV electrical line that is not part of a complete public street. Terry Francois Boulevard is an existing port street, and it will be reconstructed and offered for acceptance through a future phase. This will also enable acceptance of the phase 1 permanent electrical distribution infrastructure that will connect to and receive power from the 12 kV line. Exception number 3, subdivision regulations require that dedications and fee be irrevocably offered to the city, along with an irrevocable offer of interim easement. This exceptions request would enable the developer to offer improvements without fee, interest, or easement. Neither the port or developer can offer the city a fee, interest, or easement for any portion of the project site because the city owns the project site by and through the port, acting as the trustee of the public trust. The San Francisco Public Utilities Commission will ultimately own, operate, and maintain this 12 kV line. Exception number 4 is an exception to the tentative map conditions of approval BSM number 20, which requires all easement agreements, offers of dedication, offers of improvements, grant deeds, or any other documents to be executed by subdivider and submitted to Public Works prior to the approval of the final map or improvement plans. An exception is required because the offer of improvements for the 12 kV facilities was not included in the final map number 9443 submittal. An amendment to the public improvement agreement will be executed to include this offer of improvements for the 12 kV line. And of note, the acceptance of the offer and public dedication of the 12 kV line will be subject to a separate action by the Board of Supervisors. Exception number 5, tentative map condition of approval, SFPUC wastewater enterprise number 9. The subdivider shall not request a notice of completion on any facility that does not operate as part of a complete system. The requested exception would allow for the Director of Public Works to issue a notice of completion for the 12 kV line, provided that it otherwise satisfies the criteria for an NOC issuance. As noted previously, the 12 kV line will ultimately be removed and replaced by a permanent underground infrastructure through a future phase, which was shown through the blue line in the graphic that you can see in the lower right-hand corner. Exception number 6 is to tentative map condition of approval, PUC Power Enterprise Hetch Hetchy Power number 1, which requires that prior to July 31st, 2019, unless an exception is granted by PUC General Manager, that the subdivider shall enter into an electric service agreement with SFPUC. The requested exception allows for additional time for the terms of the ESA to be finalized, and it will be executed prior to the acceptance of facilities. I do also have Manuel Ramirez with San Francisco Public Utilities Commission is available to speak to this item specifically at the end of this presentation, if there are questions. And the last and final exception is to the tentative map condition of approval, BSM number 21, consistent with the subdivision regulations, requires a subdivider to not request a notice of completion for any portion of a street other than a full, complete, and functional street. The requested exception would allow the Director of Public Works to issue this NOC for the 12 kV line, provided that it otherwise satisfies criteria for a notice of completion. These exceptions were reviewed internally with Public Works and San Francisco Public Utilities Commission staff, and staff hereby recommends approval of these exceptions. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Shauna. Could you just repeat why the reasoning why that is recommended for an overhead segment?
Yes, so let me just scroll back up to this map so that we can see for clarity. So the alignment is constructed on existing Terry Francois Boulevard east side, which will be completely reconstructed through a future phase. And the permanent underground infrastructure will be completed in phase 4. And so this portion is overhead I think as a monetary consideration, and also because the road will be completely excavated and reconstructed at a future phase.
So you're saying this is only a temporary overhead segment, or?
That's correct. It's
okay.
It's being classified as interim because it will provide permanent power to the phase 1 area, as well as other customers, as SFPUC can, and SFPUC can speak to that if there's questions. But it's an interim line that will serve permanent power until the permanent future infrastructure is constructed.
Got it. Thank you. I would like to invite the SFPUC to speak if they have any comments they want to share. I don't have any specific questions, but and
okay.
If not, that's
Maisha,
fine too.
that would be Manuel Ramirez if you have to grant him access.
Let me see. Thank you, Shauna. Manuel, you can go ahead and unmute and you should be good to go.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I don't really have anything to add. I think Shauna did a really good job at presenting the construction and then the exceptions. I will point out that, like Shauna said, it is an interim line because it is not the permanent line that will ultimately be serving the entire area. I believe that this interim line will only exist until the completion of phase 3 and/or 4. So that's in a few years. We will be providing permanent power over this interim line once we complete our backbone infrastructure project along leading up to Terra Francois and Mission Rock.
Thank you, Manuel. Are there any public comments on this item?
If anyone has any public comment, please raise your hand, or if you are dialing in, *9.
Maisha, do you see any commenters?
There is no public comment. No one has raised their hand.
Okay, well, I would like to thank Public Works and SFPUC staff, and we will now close this item. And so now I just want to create an opportunity for any public comment on any of the items on this agenda. If you have already spoken on any of the agenda items, you will not be allowed to speak again. This is for those who might have entered the meeting late or didn't have a chance to speak earlier. Nobody?
No one.
Okay.
Going once.
Okay, if there are no more public comments, I will now close this hearing. The hearing is now closed, and thank you all for attending.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike.